Chapter 7 Responsibility Psychology. What has benefited me the most is learning I cannot control what happens outside of my pitching. Greg Maddux. My message is simple. Take control of your life. Charles Barkley. In 1989, Greg Maddux was struggling, the young Cubs pitcher who had attended some of my classes during the Fall Instructional League lost 5 of 6 decisions. His earned run average soared. After watching Maddux get roughed up, I made a promise to myself. If Greg didn't show improvement in his first outing after the All-Star break, I was going to call him. Which I did. The transformation that followed the break was astounding. Beginning on July 23rd, Maddux won 5 in a row. On August 7th, his complete game victory over Montreal lifted the Cubs into first place in the division, where they stayed the remainder of the regular season. A lot of people asked me, "What did you tell him?" "Nothing," I said. When I called, Greg wasn't home. Sports psychology doesn't create talent. It can only help release it. Sharing the story is my way of being responsible. Our topic in this section. In sports, as in life, your future and success depend upon many things, but mostly they depend on you. You have the responsibility to shape your life. You are the person who pushes yourself forward or holds yourself back. The power to succeed or fail is yours alone. I like what Don Sutton, the Hall of Fame pitcher, said. I think the reason for my success is that I was raised as a member of sharecropping family in the South, and I had to take responsibility early in my life. One of the great powers we have is the power to choose. How you choose to look at an event is going to affect how you feel and how you perform. I see a tendency in young pitchers to get upset with umpires or teammates who make infield mistakes. Too often, people play the blame game. Successful people take responsibility for themselves and their game. They understand that it's not the event, but how they respond to it that's most important. You have the choice, how you will respond to any situation. People with inner excellence, like Greg Maddux, focus on what they can control. Maddux doesn't have a Hall of Fame build. I don't look like a baseball player, he said. I mean, look at me. The speculated Atlanta right-hander says, but Maddux, the most dominant pitcher of his generation, has a Hall of Fame brain. Maddux knows the only thing he can control during a game are himself and his pitches. Tim Salmon, a former American League Rookie of the Year, said, I can't control the pitcher, the ball, the fielders, or the crowd, so I must be in control of myself. The great Stan Musial, sorry if I mispronounced your name, said, when a pitcher's throwing a spitball, don't worry. Don't complain, just hit the dry side like I do. During spring training in 1994, I gave a talk to the Seattle Mariners pitching staff. The lesson that day was about responsibility psychology. Gathered on the bright green grass field at the club's new complex in Peoria, Arizona, I shared Maddox's quote. I reminded the players that while they can't always control what happens, they can always control how they respond to it. After the speech, my cell phone rang. I recognized the Oklahoma accent immediately. It was Buddy Ryan, the new head coach of the NFL Cardinals. As the Cardinals team counselor for 6 years, I had met Buddy a few weeks earlier at the NFL scouting combine in Indianapolis. In hopes of making a good impression, I conducted a series of video interviews with prospective draft choices at the combine. Gary, can you stop by today? Sure, buddy, I said. Be there in an hour. Leaving Peoria, I turned my car south toward the Cardinals complex in Tempe. Tempe. I don't know. Buddy's call had left me in good spirits. I was proud of the video interview and felt it would be a useful player evaluation tool for the new coach who had come to the Cardinals from the Houston Oilers. In Houston, Buddy had made national headlines after he threw a punch at fellow assistant coach Kevin Gilbride, while the two while the two were on the sideline during a game. Buddy made big news again when he arrived in Arizona and announced, "You've got a winner in town." I was eager to hear his plans for the upcoming season. Ryan greeted me outside his office. It was St. Patrick's Day. He wore a green necktie and a green carnation bloom from his jacket lapel. Rudy-faced, eyes twinkling, and all smiles. Buddy looked as Irish as Finian's rainbow. Inside his office, where I had spent many hours with his predecessor, Joe Bugle, Buddy plopped down behind his giant desk. I took a seat across from him. "Gary, I've talked to the coaches. They've got a lot of respect for you," Buddy said. I was beaming inside and out. "The players like you. They trust you. I've heard nothing but good things, but I'm letting you go." Boom! I felt as if I had been slapped. My heart sank. The big smile fell off my face. As I sat in stunned silence, shock and disappointment suddenly gave way to a rush of anger. This isn't fair, I thought. I felt my jaw tighten and my fist clench. For an instant, I pictured myself flying across the desk and delivering to my ex-boss the same kind of statement Ryan had delivered to Gilbert during a flash of anger in the heat of a big game. Then I caught myself. An hour earlier, I had been standing in the warm sunshine in Peoria, lecturing a group of major league pitchers on being responsible. I had told them they can't always control the situation. All they can control is how they respond to it. Forcing myself, I sat back in my chair. I took a deep breath and looked Ryan in the eye. "Buddy, I really wish you had taken the time to get to know me," I heard myself saying in a level voice. "I think I can help you and the team, but I understand. I want to wish you good luck." We stood and shook hands. "You still gonna be a Cardinals fan?" Ryan asked. I told him I would. Then I left his office, consciously holding my head high. I had to walk my talk, although at that moment it wasn't an easy thing to do. Chapter 8. Getting Over Yourself. I worked very hard. I felt I could play the game. The only thing that could stop me was myself. Jim Abbott. This ability to conquer oneself is no doubt the most precious of all things sports bestows on us. Olga Corbett. Raphael Collin is my bilingual counselor for the Mariners and president of Voices International. On his voicemail is this message: to achieve anything you want in life, you must first start by getting out of your own way. Robert Kelly's Pogo cartoon puts it another way. We have met the enemy, and they is us. Working in the field of sports psychology, I am fascinated by how many people defeat themselves and sabotage success. Athletes at every level often interfere with their own performance. They get in their own way with their fears, their doubts, and their self-condemning nature. In 1994, pitcher Sean Etz underwent surgery on his left shoulder, but his problem in the Mariners organization went beyond injuries. "When I did well, I didn't give myself enough credit," he said. "When I did badly, I beat myself up for it." After the season, the left-hander went to the Arizona Instructional League. I worked with Sean all winter. helping him focus on things he could control. Forget errors and bad umpire calls. Etz came to understand what Arthur Ashe said. You are really never playing an opponent. You are only playing yourself. Once Etz learned how to get out of his own way, he became an all-star within the San Francisco Giants. A person's self-concept is virtually important. On his deathbed, Sigmund Freud said the essence of success in life is love and work. As individuals, we all want to feel lovable and capable. If you don't feel good about yourself, you tend not to perform well. Those who have a negative self-image find ways to self-destruct. Darryl Strawberry is a prime example. Why would an athlete blessed with so much talent and given so many opportunities to succeed continuously defeat himself with drug abuse? In psychology, there is something we call the self-consistency theory. It means we act consistent to our self-concept, our self-image. Throughout the book, we will talk about the importance of seeing yourself as being successful. If you don't see yourself successful, then your chances of succeeding are diminished. When good things happen, you tend to discount them. We all have a self-defeating thought and behaviors that undermine performance. I call them gremlins, the little invisible creatures that prevent athletes from performing at their best. Here's my gremlin checklist. If any one of them sound familiar, you might want to turn to the section that deals with it specifically. Fear. We all have a primitive fight or flight mechanism built into us to survive. It's a neurochemical response. We are ready to fight or flee whatever is threatening us. As we learned earlier, the body treats all vivid images as if they are real and happening now. In reality, most dangers are not a threat to life or limb. They are a psychological threat to self-esteem and ego. Why else would a brain surgeon turn to jelly over a 4-foot downhill braking putt? It's a threat to self-image. Fear actually can paralyze you. Anger. We have to learn to control our emotions, or they will control us. Anger is born out of frustration and expectations. Our minds and bodies don't always work together. As illustrated in a Peanuts cartoon, Lucy is holding the ball for Charlie Brown to kick. When he misses, Lucy tells him he has to use his mind and body. Charlie Brown informs Lucy that his mind and body haven't talked to each other in years. Anxiety. This is a generalized feeling of uncertainty or dread. A sense that something bad is going to happen. In baseball, some pitchers look great warming up on the side, but once they step across the chalk line and onto the field, they don't perform well. We call this white line fever. We all become anxious, but people plagued by this gremlin get anxious about being anxious. Me. This only leads to trouble. Self-consciousness. Some athletes are afraid of looking bad or embarrassing themselves. They focus on the image of how they look instead of the task at hand. Ozzie Smith said, "Show me a guy who is afraid of looking bad, and I can beat him every time." You can't perform well if you're afraid of embarrassing yourself. True. Perfectionism. Sean Etz was his own worst enemy. Because he was never satisfied with his performance, self-critical and negative perfectionists can never do enough. Their mindset is often fueled by fear of failure. Perfectionists often have a very critical, self-condemning voice. I believe perfectionism often comes from conditional parenting. Many Little League parents don't realize the damage they do to their child's self-esteem with their negative comments. When you tell a little leaguer that he failed, which you should never do to your child, you're telling him that he is a failure. Children internalize criticism. Critical, condemning coaches who use fear and embarrassment injure a young person's psychological health. Stubbornness. Some people are stubborn, unwilling to learn. They're not open to change. They believe the devil they know is better than the devil they don't know. They aren't going to take risks that will help them reach the next level. This is unfortunate because in sports, you must learn how to fail successfully. Lack of motivation. Some athletes simply lack the drive to become the best they can be. You can't buy motivation. You can't obtain it from someone else. Motivation is something nobody else can give you. Joe DiMaggio said, "Others can help motivate you, but basically, it must come from you. And it must be a constant desire to do your best at all times, under any circumstances." Competitiveness. We are all competitive. We all want to grow and succeed. Competitiveness. We are all competitive. We all want to grow and succeed, but I think that early in life, many people become discouraged as a result of negative experiences in sports. Some have coaches who embarrass them or play favorites. As a result, those people become easily discouraged and develop an attitude that says, "What's the sense in trying?" This is learned helplessness. Others are lazy. They aren't willing to do the work. Every year I get calls from the athletes who say, "Mac, I should have listened to you." Many of them had plenty of natural talent, but weren't willing to put in the time and work to reach their full potential. They thought they could get by on talent alone, but later admit to themselves that they couldn't. Distractions. Some athletes lead conflicting lifestyles. They aren't willing to discipline themselves. Strawberry, whose drug addiction has led to repeated suspensions, is a poster boy for this gremlin. Author Pete Gent, a former Dallas Cowboy, said, "Athletes hang around with people who tell them the rules do not apply to you." The athlete who thinks he can party all night and still play the next day is subject to Newton's law. What goes up must come down. In baseball, it's often his batting average that does. Persistence. Remaining optimistic during difficult times isn't easy, but the most successful people are those who look at setbacks as opportunities for comebacks. They are persistent. They refuse to lose. Look at Jim Abbott. Born without a right hand, he played 10 years in the major leagues and threw a no-hitter. Look at Lance Armstrong. The American cyclist overcame cancer and won the Tour de France 2 years in a row. Look at Kurt Warner, who went from working in a grocery store to quarterbacking the St. Louis Rams to victory in the Super Bowl. Chapter 9. The next level. It's what you learn after you know it all that counts. Earl Weaver. Build your weaknesses until they become your strengths. And I'm probably going to mispronounce this name, but Kunt Rockney. I apologize. After a few years ago, I went to Japan and worked with a Japanese professional baseball team. It is one of my most memorable sports experiences. One thing I learned from my association with the Oryx Blue Wave is a concept called Kaizen, which means constant daily learning and improvement. This concept is used not only in sports, but also in businesses around the world and is wonderfully illustrated in a movie titled Mr. Baseball. In the film, Tom Selleck plays Jack Elliott. a veteran, power-hitting first baseman for the New York Yankees. When Jack becomes mired in an extended hitting slump, the club replaces him in the lineup with a younger player. Elliot's agent sends Jack to Japan, where he signs a lucrative contract. When Elliot reports to his new club, the Dragons, he is an arrogant know-it-all. The former World Series MVP clashes with the Japanese manager, a rigid, no-nonsense disciplinarian. In America, it is said, you play baseball. In Japan, you work baseball. On the first day of batting practice, Jack demonstrates his power, driving fastballs, his pitch deep into the stands. The coach then instructs his pitcher to throw some off-speed stuff. The picture of confidence. Elliot swings and misses. He swings again, bruising nothing but the air. Through an interpreter, the manager informs his new player that he has a hole in his swing. In games, opposing pitchers don't offer Elliot fastballs. The frustrated American doesn't see any either, until he admits he has a weakness and works towards patching the hole in his swing. By the end of the movie, Jack Elliot, who came to Japan with a full teacup thinking he knew it all, becomes a better hitter and more complete player. The Japanese teach the American humility. In turn, Jack teaches his manager and Japanese teammates how to have more fun playing the game. Japanese players focus on the process of knowing themselves and improving their weaknesses. Americans seem more focused on outcome. At rookie camp, I ask every player, whether he is Alex Rodriguez or Ken Griffey Jr., to train his thoughts on the process. What can I learn today? How can I become better tomorrow? Instead of worrying about statistics and outcomes, I want them thinking about the process of learning, growing, and getting better. Learning how to learn takes work. You never stop learning in this game, said Randy Johnson, ace of the Arizona Diamondbacks pitching staff. If you ever think you know everything about the game, it will jump at you and bite you hard. I believe in the parachute principle. The mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. Athletes who hope to improve must recognize their strengths and weaknesses. They must work at turning their weaknesses into strengths. The great Hank Aaron, reflecting upon his early years in the major league, said, I did a lot of thinking about hitting. I studied the pitchers all the time. And when I found one giving me trouble, I studied him extra hard. I wanted to know why he was getting me out and what I could do about it. Don Drysdale of the Dodgers used to get me out with a change of pace pitch. In fact, all the Dodgers used to kill me with that pitch. So, after my first year, when I got home to Mobile, Alabama, I got my brother Tommy to throw changeups to me all the time. After that, they didn't throw that pitch very often. Magic Johnson's father taught his son the value of working on every phase of his game, especially the part that needed the most work. Dad, said my opponents, would always find my weakness, and that it wouldn't take long at any level for them to start exploiting me, Johnson recalls. He said my weakness would stand out like a neon sign. If I couldn't dribble with my left hand, or if I had the habit of being lazy on defense, everybody would know it. He told me that in basketball I couldn't hide. Weekend golfers go to what they call the driving range, which actually is the practice range. Many spend 70% of their practice time seeing how far they can hit the ball, even though as much as 70% of the game is played from 100 yards in. It's human nature to practice the things we enjoy the most and do well. In truth, says golfer Nancy Lopez, we should do just the opposite if we hope to improve. Pete Rose said it this way: "What's tough is to go out and work hard on the things that you don't do very well." Tiger Woods revelated himself in his game after winning the Masters by a record margin in 1997. Recognizing his weaknesses, he made subtle changes in his swing and became more accurate and consistent off the tee. I played tournament tennis in high school and college. I had a weak backhand. When I was younger, I could run around it, so I never worked on that weakness. Now that I can't run around it, my backhand is better than my forehand. Most people resist making changes. They prefer to stay in a comfort zone. The paradox is that sometimes you have to get worse before you get better. It takes a leap of faith to make changes and work on weaknesses. What if Aaron hadn't gone back to mobile and practiced hitting changeups? Would he have become the hitter that he did? Probably not. What do you do well? What don't you do so well? Where are the holes in your game? Be honest with yourself and open to learning. Be accepting of your weaknesses rather than resisting. Develop your own action plan to turn your shortcomings into strengths. And with that concludes section 1.